This morning we're finishing up our series called Tell Me the Stories of Jesus, and we're really just reminding ourselves of what it is about Jesus, the different stories of Jesus that remind us of how much we love Him, like why we love Him. And so that's what we're finishing up this morning. This morning we're looking in John chapter 6. This is one of the more kind of famous stories of Jesus because it's one of the feeding miracles where Jesus feeds. In this version of the story, Jesus feeds 5,000. And we're going to be starting in John chapter 6, starting in verse 1. I want to just read you this story. I'm going to read you part of it. I want to end. The place where I'm going to end is the question that I think is the question of this story. All right, so I just want to invite you to hear that. And then I'm going to kind of go into, I'm going to kind of become a 5-year-old and tell this story a little bit differently. So that's the reason I want to read it, and so you can hear it this morning first. So sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Well, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" Will you pray with me? God, we are thankful that your word still speaks today. We're thankful that you're still making us and molding us and teaching us. This isn't some dead book that was written thousands of years ago. This is still a living and active word that changes us as we read it and process it and internalize it and pray through it. God, I pray this morning that your word would speak. I pray that you would either now use me to speak a word or that you would speak a word in spite of me. God, I know these people didn't come to hear me talk. They came to hear your Holy Spirit be our teacher today, and that's what we ask boldly in Jesus' name. Amen. So 2 boys, 5-year-old boys. One of them we'll call Billy, one of them we'll call Johnny. Now, Johnny had spent the night over at Billy's house. And, they were staying up late, whatever it was, doing whatever it is that 5-year-old boys do when they spend the night at each other's house. They were playing Minecraft or having pillow fights or, just basically just driving their parents crazy. And they wake up in the morning and Billy says to Johnny, Johnny, you want to come with us to see Jesus today? Because me and my mother and my brother and my father and my sister, we're all going to go see Jesus today. Come with us to see Jesus today, please. Will you come with us, Johnny? Come see Jesus, please. And Johnny says, I don't know. What are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? Is it going to be fun or is it going to be boring? Is it going to be boring or is it going to be fun? Because I need to know what we're going to do before I decide if I want to go see Jesus today. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen Jesus before. But they say that he teaches, he preaches, he tells stories, and he heals people. I think it's going to be fun. You should come with us. Please come with us to see Jesus, Johnny, please. And Johnny says, okay, well, I'll go home and I will ask my mom and I will see what she says. So he bursts through the door and he goes across the street and he bursts in his own front door and he says, hey, Mom! Hey, Mom, come here, Mom. Okay, hey, Mom, listen. Okay, so Billy and his mother and his father and his brother and his sister, they're all going to go see Jesus today, Mom. Can I go with them to see Jesus today? Can I go with them to see Jesus today? Please, Mom, can I go with them? Please. Yeah, I guess it'll be okay, but what are you going to do? I don't know, Mom. I've never seen him before, but I know that they say that he teaches and he preaches and he tells stories and he heals people. Mom, it'll be fun, Mom. Can I please go with Billy to go see them? And I want to go see Jesus. Mom, please. Well, I guess that would be okay. Are you going to be gone all day? Yeah. Okay, well, if you're going to be gone all day, then we should probably pack you a lunch. That's why we pay you the big bucks, Mom. That's why we keep you around. You are so smart, Mom. You are so smart. That's good. What are you going to make me, Mom? What are you going to make me? Are you going to make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, Mom? Because you know I like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I like the peanut butter and I like to put the jelly on it and I like to put it in my mouth. You know I like the peanut butter and jelly. Mom, please make me the peanut butter and jelly. Mom, please make me peanut butter and jelly, please. Johnny, I hate to break the bad news to you, but we're out of peanut butter. I don't like you anymore, Mom. I don't like, why we run out of the peanut butter, Mom? Why do we, okay, well, okay, fine. What are you going to make me, Mom? If you're not going to make me the peanut butter jelly, what are you going to make me, Mom? Are you going to make me the ham and cheese? Because I like the ham and cheese. Put the ham and the cheese and a little bit more cheese and put it in. I like the ham and cheese. Mom, please make me the ham and cheese. Mom, I like the ham and cheese. Please let me have the ham and cheese, please. Johnny, we can't have ham. We're Jewish. I'm just so glad you get the kosher food joke. So often that just goes right over people's heads. So thank you. And then Johnny's like, oh, good call, Mom. We would have gotten in trouble for that. Okay, well then, Mom, if you're not making me the peanut butter and jelly, you're not going to make me the ham and cheese. Mom, what are you going to make me, Mom? What are you going to make me? And so the mom, she decides she's going to go look, and she goes over to the refrigerator, and she opens it up, and she sees that the refrigerator's kind of empty, and she looks at the cupboard, and she's like, oh, that's not there. And then she decides, she does, you moms are good at this. She decides, this is how you know your mom's going to pull one over on you, right? She goes over to Johnny. She says, hey, Johnny, do you know how lucky you are that you are my son? No, Mom, I don't know. How lucky am I? Oh, you are so lucky. Let me tell you how lucky I am, because I love you, because I'm your mother, because you are my son, because you are my firstborn, and I love you, and I would do anything for you. I am going to make you the biggest, the juiciest, cold catfish sandwich that you have ever had in your entire life. Mom, I'm not very hungry. I think I'm going to go out and just go with Billy, Mom. I'm just going to go. I'll eat later. When I get home, Mom, that's what I'll do. I'll go. I got to see you, Mom. I'm going to go. Mom's like, whoa, Your mom ever catch you on the way out the door? Whoa, stop, come, stay. Yes, ma'am. Look, you want to go see Jesus today, right? Okay, if you want to go see Jesus, you're going to be gone all day, right? Okay, you're going to go see Jesus. You're going to be gone all day. You got to take some food. So not only, that's all we got. This is what we got, okay? So not only are you going to take a cold catfish sandwich, but you're going to take it and you're going to like it. That's right. But, Mom, I don't like the cold catfish sandwich, Mom. I don't like it. I don't like it, Mom. Please don't make me eat the cold catfish sandwich, Mom. Please don't make me eat the cold catfish sandwich. I don't like the cold catfish sandwich, please. Do you want to go? Then take it. Okay. So she goes over to the refrigerator and she opens it up and she pulls out some fish, and she gets over here and she gets some bread and she puts some bread and some fish and some bread and some fish and just make this big old catfish sandwich. It's like this big. She had to push it down and tie a string around it and she shoved it down in a big old garbage bag, and she throws it over her shoulder and she limps over to him and she throws it on his shoulder and he limps out the door to go see Jesus for the day. Now he goes out to see Jesus with Billy and his family, and they're sitting there, and there's this moment. Now we don't know a whole lot of details about what was happening that day, but we know that probably Jesus did what Jesus does, right? He just kind of did what he does. He's teaching, he's preaching, he's telling stories, he's healing people. Scriptures do tell us that as he kind of sees this crowd and they're coming towards him, and he looks out over them, and there had to have been this moment, right, where he decides what he's going to do. But over here on the side, you got Johnny, and maybe Jesus was waiting for people to gather. Maybe he had already taught a little bit, and he was taking a break, and more people were coming. We don't really know, but you got to know that Johnny's sitting there, and he puts out his little picnic blanket, and he sits down on the ground, and he opens up his garbage sack, and he takes out his cold catfish sandwich, and he pushes it together like that, and he snips the string like that, and he holds it, and he's getting ready to put it in his mouth. Do that. Go like that. Go. You didn't do it. All right, whatever. So, and then you have to freeze, right? And then you got to come back over here. And Jesus, he's looking out, and he has this idea. And it says that he asks this question to test them. And so he says to his disciples, he says, hey, specifically one of his disciples to Philip, and he says, hey, where are we going to buy enough bread for all these people to eat? And you got to know that when he asked that question, Philip and probably everybody else who was in hearing range, they're all looking at the ground going, I don't know. It's that kind of moment when the preacher asks you to pray in a committee meeting, right? Or like in Sunday school, Actually, our students, they'll pray, but the rest of you people, I'll say, hey, who wants to pray? And you all go, phew, like this, right? Well, you got to know. Jesus is like, hey, where are we going to buy bread for all these people? And the disciples are like, phew, I got nothing. I don't have nothing. Nothing plus nothing equals nothing. Can't feed nobody with nothing. They're all just looking around the ground and not knowing what to do. And finally, one of them kind of raises his hand, says, Lord, it would take us 6 months' wages to just buy enough bread for these people to take a bite. And then finally somebody else raises their hand, Andrew, and he says, Lord, I don't know if this is what you're asking or not, but I did see this kid, and it looked like he was over there getting to eat like a cold catfish sandwich. I don't know if that's really what you're looking for, and I don't know that it would go very far among this group of people, but I did see that. And then can't you imagine that Jesus just got a big smile on his face? Like, yeah, bring me the cold catfish sandwich. Now you got to imagine again, you got Johnny over here sitting on the ground working on his tan, getting ready to eat a sandwich, and these big old burly fisherman type guys, right? These all come over here, they're like, they kind of eclipse the sun over poor little Johnny, right? And he's looking up at them, and they're looking down at him, and they probably didn't say it like this. I mean, they were probably nice enough guys, right? But to an adult talking to a kid sitting on the ground getting ready to eat a sandwich, you got to know it felt to him like they were coming up here and like going, hey, kid, Jesus wants your sandwich. What? Jesus. He wants your sandwich. Well, what's he going to do with it? Is he going to eat it? Because if he's going to eat it, I'm pretty hungry my own self, and I think I will eat it my own self, so I think I would just eat it myself. Thank you, though. Look, kid, see, we're talking about, Jesus, creator of the universe, maker of all that is and ever will be. And by the way, I might add, controller of your eternal destiny. If I'm you, I'm giving him the sandwich. Now Johnny has a decision to make, right? Because his stomach's growling, right? Grr, do that, go grr. All right, thanks for the 3 of you that did that right here. His stomach's growling and he's hungry. But is Jesus, I am hungry, but Jesus seemed like a pretty nice guy. And he hands up the sandwich and he gives it to the disciples. And then the disciples take it back over to Jesus, and then Jesus again does what Jesus does. He takes that sandwich and then he prays over it, he blesses it, and then he multiplies it, and he gives it to his disciples, and he says, here, pass this out. And they do. And then the scriptures tell us, that I didn't get to this part when we were reading, but the scriptures then tell us that not only, that everybody who was there got to eat until they were full, until they were satisfied. And then do you remember how many, from the story, do you remember how many baskets of leftovers they took up? Anybody remember? 12 baskets of leftovers. So not only did that cold catfish sandwich feed everybody in that crowd, but then there were 12 baskets of leftovers. Now, friends, there will be people who will tell you this story. And they will tell you that this story is about Jesus. The truth is, I think they're right. This story is about Jesus. This is about, the truth, that sandwich is just a sandwich in the hands of anybody else, right? So it is about Jesus. It's about the same Jesus who can take something dead and make it alive again. It's about the same Jesus who can take something broken and make it beautiful again. It's the same God who can take something that is a cold catfish sandwich and he can turn it into a feast. It is about Jesus. It's about the amazing God that we serve, and about how he can take small things that we think are nothing, things that we think are too insignificant to even offer to him, and to take those cold catfish sandwiches and do something with them. Again, the sandwich in the hands of anybody else is just a sandwich. This is about Jesus. But the thing you also need to know is that John's gospel, this John chapter 6, is the only version of this story that mentions the little boy. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but it seems to me that John is also trying to make a second point here. This story is not just about Jesus. It is majorly about Jesus, but it's not just about Jesus, because John wants to make sure that we understood that that sandwich belonged to somebody, and that somebody had to take that sandwich and they had to give it to Jesus so that he could do what it was that he wanted to do with it. Friends, this story is not just about Jesus. It's about a little boy with a cold catfish sandwich. And yes, I know that catfish is not kosher either. All you Old Testament scholars who are going to come hammer me with that afterwards, I know that. But cold salmon sandwich just didn't sound as good. But it's about a kid with a little cold catfish sandwich who's willing to give the nothing that he thinks that he has, the thing that seems so insignificant. I mean, in that moment, he had to decide whether he was going to feed himself or he was going to be selfless. And whether this little cold, I mean, he didn't even know what Jesus was going to do with it. He certainly had no reasonable expectation that Jesus could do something amazing like that with it. He just said, okay, Jesus is asking for it, here it is. Friends, when we went to Army this week, that's what that group did. We gave 1/52nd of our year. What was that, like less than 2%, right, of our year? And certainly a really small fraction of our lives. And we went for 1 week. To most of us, it didn't seem like, a week's not that big of a sacrifice. We're just going to go for a week. We can do this. Don't know what God can do with it. Seemed pretty insignificant at the time. We paid some money to go, and we went to go do what it is that we're going to do. And we, like I said, we brought about 60 from our church. We met a couple other churches, and we went to Dickinson. And again, they had no reasonable expectation that we were going to do something, amazing, because we were just giving up this little thing, right? It was just a cold catfish sandwich. Now, I can't speak for all these guys. You've heard some of their stories, and I know that if you were to talk to some of them, they would be happy to tell you the stories of what God did this week, both in their own lives and also in the lives of the people that they worked for, the homeowners that they worked for. Go ask the Aldridges, ask them about their experience building Ed built a 60-foot wheelchair ramp, 40 holes or something you guys had to dig. They were like 3 feet deep. Ask Kathy about the Jumanji house, right? And ask, what they did. Ask Kevin Johnson and his group, what they built this deck on top of a second-story thing and these stairs, and it took like other groups to come and help. You can ask all of them. They will tell you all those stories. All I know is the story that our group got to experience. We built, our first wheelchair ramp was a 24-foot ramp and a 4-foot landing. So it was all said and done, it was 28 feet. It was straight out, from the house. We were working for a guy named Fred. And Fred lived with his mom, who was 96 years old. Fred was about 60 years old. And he lived with his mom, who was 96 years old. Their house was falling apart. They needed everything from about my midsection all the way to the ground needed to be just, all the boards are on the outside, all the siding just needed to be replaced. You could literally reach your hand in some places into his living room or his bedroom. But he didn't want to put us out. That's the kind of person that we were working for. Oh, no, I'll do that at some point. I'll get there. This wheelchair ramp is just a really big deal. Thank you guys so much. So we built this wheelchair ramp, even though we tried to get him to let us do some other things. But we built this wheelchair ramp and this landing for his mother, who 96 years old, lived in his house, was blind. She couldn't get out of the house. And basically they had to have, these nurses' aides and nurses that would come in and care for her and clean her up and check her vital signs, all that kind of stuff. And they came every few days. The whole experience was, it was a great experience. I had a great team, and we had a lot of fun together. And we finished this thing that none of us, had the confidence that we could really do. At least certainly I didn't. They didn't know how scared I was about building a wheelchair ramp for somebody. But the whole experience was made for me when Fred walks out, like on our last day, and he starts to come out, and he said, "Hey, is this thing sturdy? Can I step on it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Do that at your own risk." But he comes out on this new wheelchair ramp, and he's like, "Wow, this thing is pretty sturdy. You guys did a pretty good job, And he keeps walking down the ramp, and all of our students are talking to him and stuff. And he gets near the bottom of the ramp, and I just had to know. I asked him. I said, "Fred, when is the last time your mom has been out of her house?" He says, "It's been about a year." I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about how long a year is not to get out of your house. I would go stir crazy after a couple of days. I challenge you to go 2 weeks without leaving your house. It had been a year since his mother had left her house. And when somebody asked him, what are you guys going to do now that she can get out of her house? You know what he said? He didn't have some big plans, some crazy thing. He just said, I really want to, now I get to take my mom to do something we like to do together. We like to go to Sonic and get a brown bag special. That's what he said. Now, friends, I don't know that we changed the whole world by doing that. But I know that we changed his life. And I know that we changed his mother's life. And I know that our story was one of 20 or 30 other stories of our Army, and I know that our Army was one of about 30 camps that was going on this summer. And Army is one of hundreds of thousands of Christian organizations, including churches and nonprofits that are out doing, in the name of Christ, the same kinds of things that we did this week. A bunch of people just willing to give 1/52nd of their time for a year. People like me who don't really know how to use power tools. Don't tell anybody I said that. It'll be our little secret. But I had to teach them how to use power tools, and some of them were working with me on that too. People who said, I don't really know, God, if you can take my cold catfish sandwich, but if you can have it, if you want it, you can do something with it, you can have it. And every single one of us went there this week, not exactly knowing what we were good at or what God was going to use, and he took what we had and he blessed it and he multiplied it, and he didn't just bless us, he blessed the people around us. Friends, the day that Johnny didn't eat, when he didn't keep that sandwich just for himself, he could have eaten that sandwich and he would have been filled. But you got to check this out. This is how the kingdom works. He took what he had, what he already had, and he gave it to Jesus, and Jesus multiplied it and blessed it, and he gave it to the people around him. Now, do you remember what it says in the thing? It says, everyone ate until they were filled. You know who that includes? That includes Johnny. See, when Johnny gave up what he had, it's not like everybody else got to eat but Johnny. Johnny got to eat until he was satisfied, and so did the thousands and maybe even tens of thousands. They said that there were 5,000 men there that day. Now, ladies, I didn't make up the rules back then, but they didn't probably count women that day. They would not typically have counted women. So if there were 5,000 men, let's say that there was one woman for every man. There could have been 10,000. Let's say that there was one child. Children, I didn't make up the rules. They didn't count children back then either. Let's say for every man who was there was also a child there. There could have been 15,000. There could have been more. There could have been fewer. We don't really know. All we know is everybody there that day, including Johnny, ate and was satisfied because this one little kid who had a cold catfish sandwich, who had no reasonable expectation that would make a difference to anybody but him when the day started, was willing to say, oh, okay, here, you take it. And he trusted that God could do something more with it than he would do with it. Now stay with me. Here's the question. What are your cold catfish sandwiches? What are the things that you think are so small, they're so insignificant, they're not even worth mentioning? I can only give an hour a week. What could God do with an hour a week? Friends, God can do a lot with an hour a week. Oh, I can only give 1 week a year. What could God really do with 1 week a year? I promise you he can do a lot with 1 week a year. Oh, I just got a few dollars lying around. Here's $5, here's $10, here's whatever. Can I tell you something? Fred, the guy who lived in a house that's fallen down around him, as much as I begged him not to hand it to me, he gave us $100 to pass on to Army so that more kids could do for other people what we did for him. This is a guy who had holes in his house, people. And he was like, hey, this is what I got. And I begged him not to give it to me. And he said, this is God's money. And God told me to give it to you, and I'm giving it to you. And I took it and I gave it to Mac, and Mac's passed it on to Army. Friends, you may think it's nothing. You may think that your $5 or your $100 or your $1,000 or your $100,000 are nothing compared to the need in the world, and you would be correct. You could write a $10 million check. Let's say somebody could do that. You could write a $10 million check, and when you think of the huge need in the world, it is still just a drop in the bucket. You have no reasonable expectation, whether it's $5 or $5 million, that you could make a difference with whatever it is that you have. But we know a God. We serve a God who can take an hour a week or $5 a month, or whatever cold catfish sandwich. Maybe it's your talents. I don't have many talents, but I can use my hands. I have a healthy body. I can go and I can do UM-Army. I have a little bit of free time here and there. I don't know what your talents are. I don't know what your time is, your talent is, or your treasure is. But here's what I know. That if you're willing to give that to God, God can take it and make something out of it. And He can not only bless you with it. See, we're always afraid that when we give up what we have, it's like God's going to take it away from us. Can I ask you guys who went to UM-Army this week, were you blessed by giving what you gave? Were you filled by giving what you gave? Everybody who gives, this is how the kingdom works. When you give, you are filled as well. You are blessed by the giving and by the doing and by the serving. But then God takes it and He makes it multiplied to the ones and the tens and the dozens and the hundreds and the thousands and even to the tens of thousands. What is your cold catfish sandwich? What is it that you're sitting on today that you think is either too insignificant that it can't make a difference, or it's so significant that you just couldn't bear to part with it? What are the things that you are sitting on today that God could use? And He could multiply them and bless them. Not just bless you, but to bless the people around you, the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and even the 10,000s. We're going to close this morning with a time of prayer. We do that every Sunday, and I don't typically guide your prayer time. I usually, you know how I say it. I usually say, look, I don't know what kind of conversation God needs to have with you, but I trust Him. And I know that you trust Him. This morning, I want to do something a little different because I feel led to do something different. I want to ask you to ask God, God, what is my cold catfish sandwich? What are the things that I'm holding on to because they're either too insignificant and I think you can't do something with them, or they're so big, God, that they become an idol in my life and I can't let go of them? What are the things in my life, God, that I need to give to you so that you can take them and multiply them and bless the people around me? I want us to do that. I want to invite you, you can go pray at the altar kneelers on the side, or you can just sit where you are and pray right where you are. And then I want to close this in prayer at the end of that. But right now, I just want to invite you to ask God, what are my cold catfish sandwiches? God, what is it that you want me to do, to give, to be, so that your kingdom can be multiplied? Let's take a time of prayer.